Hello everybody, welcome back to IELTS Monkey. Always happy to see you. Today we're going to have a little bit of a mini lesson where we are going to focus on the question type of true, false, and not given on the IELTS reading test. We're going to talk about this today because it is the task type that gives my students the most difficulty. I get the most questions about this and matching headings, but we'll talk about that in a different video. So today we're going to hopefully understand a little bit better how we can actually navigate the true, false, not given question on the IELTS exam, make it a little bit less stressful for you, and then hopefully improve your overall reading score. So without any further delay, let's jump right into it. Now, we're going to do a couple of things today. First of all, we're going to understand exactly what does true, false, and not given mean. We're then going to take a look at the most common problems students face when trying to answer these questions. We'll take a look at some strategies, and finally, I will show you an example that will put everything together and hopefully make it a little bit easier to understand. Now, we're going to start off quite simply, but it's important. You may be thinking, teacher, I know what true, false, and not given means. Okay, great. But do you really? Let's really make sure we understand what these mean at a basic level. So, when an answer is true, that means that the information in the question, in the statement, matches the meaning of the information in the text. That means the information is both in the statement and in the text, and the meaning matches. This is important. If the answer is false, that means that the answer in the text is opposite to the information in the statement. However, the information in the statement, the meaning of the statement, is still there in the text. It may sound a little confusing right now, but in our example later, it will be a lot more clear. Now finally, if there is no information, or if the meaning doesn't match, then the answer is going to be not given. And we're going to talk about how one of the biggest mistakes I see students make is choosing between not given and false. And the reason this is a big mistake, and we'll show you in the example later, is because it's the simple fact that when you have a false answer, it means that the information in the statement is in the text. It's just opposite or wrong. But if there's a not given answer, the information in the statement is not in the text. So basically what you're choosing between is something that is there and something that isn't there. Okay? Now again, if this isn't clear yet, it'll make more sense later. But the main key here is that when we are answering true and false, the information that's in the statement exists in the text, whereas when we're answering not given, the information in the statement does not exist in the text. So true is the same meaning as the same, not similar, not kind of similar. If it's kind of similar or not exactly the same, it's going to be false. We're not dealing with kind ofs or maybes. We are dealing with factual information. So we're never going to have a situation where, oh, well, it's kind of similar, so maybe it's true. No, in that case, it's going to be false. So let's take a look at some of the common problems. Not given is obviously one of the biggest issues. They're not used to answering questions like this because it's just not a normal thing we do. And so because of this, we're not sure what to look for. But in fact, it's about what we're not finding that helps us understand that it's a not given answer. Of course, some students fail to understand what the statement means. And so this is really important. When you are reading the statements for a true, false, not given question, and you're looking for those in the text, you need to understand the meaning. I want you to start thinking in terms of question words: who, what, where, when, why, and how. And again, in the example, I'll expand on this so you can understand a little bit better. And finally, now this is kind of a problem throughout the reading test. Many students focus on those keywords, but they don't realize that they're going to actually be looking for synonyms. okay? So just like in every other part of the reading test, the keywords that you see in the questions and the statements aren't necessarily going to be exactly copied in the text. You're going to need to look for something that is similar. And another note on keywords. Some students make the mistake of feeling like, oh, I've found the keywords, so the answer has to be true or false. Otherwise, if it's not given, I wouldn't find the keywords. But this isn't correct necessarily. Think of the keywords as directions, as a tool to navigate to the right area of the passage where the answer should or should not be in the case of not given. What I mean to say is, answers that are true are going to have keywords from the statements, and they're going to have synonyms in the text. Same with false. But the same with not given. Otherwise, you would never be able to find the area where the answer is. So just because you find keywords, synonyms of keywords in the text, doesn't mean that it's automatically going to be true and true or false. And this is another mistake that some students make. Okay, so as it says here on the top, just because an answer is not given does not mean there are no words in the statements that match the words in the text. Okay, it's not a good way to think about answering these questions. Now, multiple choice, it's easier to do that with keywords. But again, I really want you to think about using the keywords as a set of directions to help you find where the answer is, but not as a tool to actually choose the correct answer. When we're doing that, we need to match the meaning, okay? All right, so here's some top 10 strategies and tips in general before we jump into our example. First of all, it doesn't matter if you are an expert on birds and the article is about birds and you know everything about birds and you say, oh, that's wrong because I know it. Okay, you need to leave all of that aside. Ignore anything you know about the topic. Don't assume that your answer is correct because you read it somewhere on the internet, right? You can only follow and choose your answers based on the text only. Make sure you identify qualifying words and statements. This is really important. Words like some, all, mainly, often, always, occasionally. These words can sometimes help determine whether an answer is true or false, right? And it's going to test to make sure you've read the whole statement. You see in the example here, Coca-Cola has always made its drinks in the USA is different from Coca-Cola has mainly made its drinks in the USA. Always versus mainly can be the difference between you getting a true or a false or a correct answer in the case that it's true or it's false. So really pay attention. I always ask students to circle these words, right? Let's underline the key words, but let's actually circle these qualifying words because it's really important to pay attention to them. In addition, we want to take a look at some verbs that qualify. Again, we have this example here. The man claimed he was a British citizen, and the man is a British citizen. Again, these are two different meanings. So this comes back to really understanding the meaning of the statement that you're trying to find the answer for in the text. All right, there is always going to be an answer. If you can't find it, it's probably not given, right? And we'll talk about that tip in a second. But there's always going to be an answer. I have some students saying, teacher, it's not there. It is there, right? It is always there. Make sure that you understand the meaning. So this comes back to the keywords. One of the biggest pieces of reading advice, right, is to skim and to scan. And yeah, that works and it's really important. But for true, false, not given, if you just skim and scan, it means you're just looking for keywords. Remember, once you find the location, you need to read very carefully to understand the meaning. And again, don't look for words that directly match. We've talked about that already. You always want to look for synonyms. Remember, we are going to be matching meaning, not words. I know I keep repeating this. We're matching meaning over and over again, but it's really, really important and something that students often forget. All right, number 7. If you can't find the info, it's probably not given. Don't waste time looking for something that is not there. And another tip, don't be afraid to skip a question and come back later. There's strategy involved in taking this test, and you have time pressure. So if you need to skip and come back later, sometimes you might even find the answer or understand the answer better later on if you have skipped and you continue to read on. Finally, if you really have no idea, just put not given. You probably have no idea since the answer is not there. This is a really good tip here. The answers are always in the same order as they appear in the text. So you're not going to be jumping around from the beginning of the paragraph to the end of the paragraph to the middle of the paragraph. If you can find number one and you are confident about number one, use that as your baseline. That's where you can start, and you know for a fact that the answer to number two has to be somewhere directly below, and then the answer for number three is going to follow. This also helps if you skip an answer. Let's say you find the answer for number one and then you find the answer for number four. Okay, well then you know that answers 2 and 3 are going to be above number 4 and below number 1, and you can kind of work backwards then. Okay, and then yes, no, and not given. These are slightly different because they deal with opinion. It's not really a top tip here, but just something to keep in mind. Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look at our example. So let's pretend that we have this statement taken from a reading. It's the first sentence of a reading. And it reads, chilies originate in South America and have been eaten for at least 9,500 years. And below we have 3 true, false, not given statements that we have to try and answer. So the first one being, number 1, chilies come from South America. Based on the statement in blue, is that true, false, or not given? Number 2, people began eating chilies in the last few centuries. And number 3, South Americans were the first people to start eating chilies. I'll give you 30 seconds here to read the statement in blue again, and try to come up with your own answers and ideas for what you think this might be. So 30 seconds starting now. Okay, do you think you got it? Let's take a look. So the first thing I always tell students is, what are we talking about here? We talked earlier a little bit about our question words, who, what, where, when, why, how. And these question words help us understand what the meaning is. So if we take a look at chilies originate in South America, this is answering the question word of where chilies come from. And if we look at they have been eaten for at least 9,500 years, this is answering the question, how long have chilies been eaten? So where chilies come from and how long. This is key. This is important. So now we need to take a look at our questions below 1, 2, and 3 and see if, first of all, we can match the meaning. Now, here are the steps. Once you match the meaning, if the meaning is the same, if they're both talking about the same thing, the answer has to be true or false 100%. And if the meaning does not match, if they are not talking about the same thing, the answer has to be not given. And this is why you can never choose between false and not given. How can you choose from a meaning that is there and a meaning that is not there at the same time? So, number 1, chilies come from South America. What question word is this answering? Where? Where do chilies come from? And in the statement in blue, it also answers the question word, where do chilies come from? So we know it has to be true or false. And then we take a look and we see originate and come from. These are synonyms. They mean the same thing. And South America match, so they are exactly the same. And so number 1 is clearly true. They both talk about the same thing, where chilies come from. They have synonyms that match, and then the actual answer matches as well. Number 2, people began eating chilies in the last few centuries. right? So again, this question answers how long have people been eating chilies? When did they start eating chilies? And if we look at the statement in blue, have been eaten for at least 9,500 years. This also answers how long or when did they start eating chilies. So again, the meaning matches. The answer has to be true or false. So now that we know we're in the correct category, we can take it one step further and we take a look at 9,500 years. And obviously that is going to be different from the last few centuries. A century, of course, is 100 years, so a few centuries would be 200 to 300 years maximum. Quite different from 9,500 years. So again, we've established that the meaning matches, so it has to be true or false. But now we've seen that the answer is actually opposite or contradictory or wrong, so the answer is going to be false. Finally, that leaves us with number 3, and as you probably can guess, it's going to be not given. But why? So, number 3, what question word does it answer? Is it answering where chilies come from? Is it answering how long people have eaten chilies? No. It's answering the question, who? Who were the first people to start eating chilies? However, if you take a look at the original statement in blue, it doesn't talk about who. It only talks about where and how long. Therefore, automatically, we don't even have to think about it. The answer is going to be not given because the meaning in number 3, answering the question who, is not the same as the meaning in the original statement. Therefore, it cannot be true or false. It has to be not given. So be careful about making assumptions. While you might think, hey, South Americans probably did begin eating chilies first. Look at this, 9,500 years, that's a really long time. But it does not specifically tell us this exactly. So this is where a lot of students make their mistakes. They make assumptions, they don't match the meaning. So let's review, right? Hopefully, by the way, this example helps you a little bit and it helps you understand the process that I ask my students to go through. But let's do a quick review. So first of all, we're going to make sure we really understand the meaning of the statements. Think about our question words, okay? We're going to use the keywords in the statements to help us identify where in the passage the answer might be. And remember, we're always looking for synonyms and not the exact keywords. Once we find the answer, we need to match the meaning of the statement with the area where we think the answer is in the text. If the meaning matches, if they're both answering the same question words, right, the answer has to be true or false. Then we take a look at the actual answer. If it directly matches, of course it's true. If it directly contradicts or is opposite or is similar but not exact, the answer is false. Now, if the meaning is different in the statement than from the text, then your answer is going to be not given. So hopefully this saves you a lot of headaches from trying to decide between false and not given. Remember, if you're doing that, you've already made a mistake. Back up, read it again, make sure you understand the meaning. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really hope today was helpful for you. I really like teaching this to my students because I think it helps relieve a lot of the stress and takes away some of the mystery. Now, it's not always going to be as easy as this example, I understand, and you always will be under a little bit of stress. But practice every day. We talked about earlier in our study tips how to practice. Go online, find your Cambridge books, wherever you can. Find lots and lots of true, false, not given question types and exercises, and practice 1 or 2 a day. Do this for 2 weeks. Don't worry about matching headings. Don't worry about multiple choice. Just practice this until you can feel more confident. Thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your day. As always, it's appreciated that you come and visit us here at IELTS Monkey. Please leave a like and let us know if you have any questions. Bye-bye.